Janey.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, really good to chat with you at last.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And this is such a privilege for me because when I look around my house now, there are so many things which I can directly attribute to the book that you wrote that I read 15 years ago when I had I was pregnant with my daughter. And it's very rare to read a book that actually changes your life. And that book did. So I want to thank you for that.
Oh, I really appreciate that. It was such an important book for me. It was the first book I'd written, of course. And it was I felt like it was my life's work in that book. But actually, no one was interested. And anyone who's written a book will know, certainly in those days, just because you've written a book doesn't mean it's on the bookshelves. And basically, it was kind of my life's work, and it was nowhere, and nobody could buy it, and I was gutted. And then I remember just thinking, I'm not going to let this go. So I just used everything within my power to just try and get some publicity. And actually, it was because of one interview with Johnny Walker that made it happen. And then sort of overnight, the book went to number 1 on Amazon bestsellers, and all the bookshops that had previously said, oh no, we're not interested in stocking it. Suddenly, everyone wants to stock it. So it was such an important book, I think, because I think, number one, I am extremely realistic about everything. So I wasn't telling anyone to do anything that I hadn't already done. But because I had that title, and I'm really grateful that title came to me, because I had that title, it meant that I didn't have to be perfect, right? That's exactly what it is. It's being imperfectly natural. So yes, you do the bits you can. And I think that's what resonated really, was so many people were becoming aware of sort of optimum health and well-being and eco-living and sustainability, but they couldn't get everything right. And that felt exhausting. I mean, what's interesting now, of course, is that, everything's kind of come full circle, and all the stuff that I was talking about back then, is now seen as, a huge brand new wellness trend. It makes me laugh sometimes. I sort of go, hold on a minute. I was actually talking about coconut oil and oil pulling 15 years ago. It's just that nobody was listening to me.
You were. And that was when I switched, actually, because I used to have quite a posh makeup remover. And it was from literally the day I read your book. I've used coconut oil ever since, which works brilliantly. And it's cheap and it smells nice. And if you get it in your eye, it doesn't sting. And it was just, as you say, an imperfectly natural woman. It was all these very simple, very accessible things that you could do straight off, which were just doable. That was the beauty of it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was really documenting my own life and my own kind of experience. And I did do a tremendous amount of research for the book. So there are, in addition to the everyday things like the coconut oil, and the natural deodorants and washing your clothes without detergent and all of that stuff, I do get into some wacky stuff as well, and some of the more expensive things. But again, that makes me laugh because again, now, sort of people talk about things like far infrared machines, which is amazing for cancer treatment. And I was talking about that again 15 years ago. As a really important kind of method of treatment. It's great to see how much of the stuff that I was speaking about back then has come into I wouldn't say everyone, but many people's psyche, and now it doesn't seem so bonkers.
It doesn't seem so bonkers, and you were way ahead of your time. There's no question. Yeah. But I still find, and I don't know if you find this as well, that a lot of women I chat to who are very into their fitness and often are watching everything that they eat. And yet when it comes to toxins around the house, it's like a complete blind spot. And it's just not something that they are either thinking about or want to think about. I don't know if you come across that.
Yeah, it's very, very common, actually. And, one of the things I used to say on talks a lot was, that so many of us are aware of what's in our food. If you're a mum, you're very used to looking at the ingredients and looking for E numbers and chemicals, and you won't buy that. And, and sometimes you go as far as looking at the ingredients on your skincare. So you start to care about that. And yet, you get home and spritz everything going. And you're living in a kind of toxic soup. And I mean, it's just, you can't know till you know. It's that thing, isn't it, really? But once you do, and once you get it, that that these are, basically the more you reduce the synthetic toxic chemicals, the healthier you'll be. And of course, you, as I've said so many times in all my books, you get to, if you focus on health first, you get to tick the eco box without even trying. If you focus on the eco picture first, on the sustainability first, that goes some way towards it, but not fully. So for example, to take your, you were talking about sort of cleaning products, for example. In the past, I've been asked if I'll do some work or review, obviously I won't name the brand, but a brand who were bringing out a sustainable eco detergent. And so they'd thrown a ton of money into it, and it was all singing, all dancing, their eco product. And when I actually looked at it, yes, the packaging was made from recyclable something or other, something recycled, and it was biodegradable or recyclable. So the packaging was ticked the green box, but the contents, the product, was still hideous and had just about every toxic chemical in it you could think of, which ultimately is, going to be in the environment. So it's going to affect your breathing and your skin and everything else. And then ultimately it's going to be washed down through the sink and will affect the fish. So actually it wasn't sustainable at all. Right. So I see it as the other way. I say, okay, let's start with your health and well-being. Let's look at the product that is completely natural and won't harm you or the environment. And of course that would take in the packaging as well, because most companies that care about their natural products will follow the whole thing through, the whole process. So if you do tick that, as I say, optimum health box, the green bit comes in alongside it.
Yeah. And it's so easy to be seduced and bamboozled by lovely green packaging that has all the right symbols and pictures of trees. And I did it for years. I mean, for years and years, I used a washing powder, which I only relatively recently stopped using. And I moved to something which was very simple. It had no fragrance at all. And it's derived from coconut, I think. And it's funny because I have 3 kids and we were all happy with this very unscented washing powder, apart from my son, Louis, who has just turned 20. And he now does his own washing. He buys his own smelly washing powder and he does his own washing because he's so accustomed to the smell of something on clothes that he just can't cope with it. And I'm the other way. I pulled out a T-shirt recently and I put it on and I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
Smell. What is that?
I know. When you don't use chemicals, it's a real shock to the system, isn't it? Sometimes I remember walking down the street past someone, she was just getting out her car as I was walking down the street. Oh God, I nearly fainted. She'd obviously sprayed some perfume. And when you're not used to it, it really affects you.
It's like a punch in the face. But this was a T-shirt, Janey, that had been washed a year previously when we were on holiday. And that's why it was someone else's. But if you imagine how strong that is,
absolutely.
Stay hanging around for 12 months. And I actually had to take it off. I couldn't cope with it. So I put it in the wash with my washing powder.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I have 4 kids and a couple of them are the same. They like that sort of strong smell. Well, they'll have to just do their washing somewhere else because I ain't doing it.
Because we've got used to the idea that if something is clean, it has to have that kind of Persil type aroma. But that's not really a clean smell. I see it now as a toxic smell.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically the artificial fragrance, which is what you're referring to, is in just about everything. It's not just cleaning products. It's in our personal care products, obviously in our cleaning products as well, and laundry. And artificial fragrance is one of the big baddies, really, because the issue with artificial fragrance is that we don't know how much is in there and what it is. So whereas if you're looking at, let's say, you take ingredients in a food product, you might know that you're allergic to whatever it is, gluten or whatever a particular E number or something. So you can, number one, you can look for it and you can look how high it is in the ingredient list. So you can look as to how much there is. So if there's any kind of scale of intolerance, you'll be able to work out, okay, well, I can cope with a little bit of that, but not too much. But when it comes to artificial fragrance, they are allowed legally to use any number of different synthetic fragrances to any level they like, effectively. So it might be that you might have a product that's got 100 different synthetic fragrances all mixed in there, possibly. And you don't know how much, because all that they're required to do is write on the ingredient list parfum or fragrance or a bunch of different names that all mean the same thing, which is artificial fragrance. And so it's not surprising that this is highly, it's really not beneficial for anyone who's in any way sensitive. If you're asthmatic or if you have, it can lead to all kinds of problems. People wonder why they have low-level insomnia and headaches and irritability, and they're just feeling under the weather. And of course, I'm not saying that all illness can be attributed to artificial fragrance. But you know what? When you take the artificial fragrance out of your life, you'll be amazed how, so many people find they sleep better, their skin clears up, they don't have that kind of brain fog. Because it's highly toxic, and if you're in any way sensitive, it won't be doing you any good at all.
Yeah, and listening to you there, I'm just thinking how many places this stuff turns up. Like we ran out of toilet paper last week, Janey, and my husband went out and bought. He came.
Oh God, not a scented one.
Oh, you know what's coming.
Oh my God,
coming.
No. That happened to me back.
Yes. He came back triumphantly with this enormous pack. He said, "Don't worry, I've bought 24 packs with this huge pack." So I was like, great, I'm unpacking it all. I'm like,
thinking, what is that smell?
What is that? So, and I didn't click at first because I'd never come across such a thing. So I'm unpacking it all. And I'm thinking, it's the loo paper. And then I searched the packet, and then it said luxury loo toilet paper, and then underneath with fragrance. Who on earth would want to put fragrance on loo paper, given where you put it? I mean, this is a sensitive part of particularly for us ladies, this is a very sensitive part of the body. So again, I'm like, I'm not using this. And my Louis again, I'll have it. I like that smell. So you really have to be on your guard, because they think they're doing you a favor by putting it everywhere.
Of course, yeah, you do. It's when you make a difference, when you change these things in your life, you do become sort of ultra sensitive. So you look out for, again, if you look for the completely natural brands, in that instance, the eco paper isn't fragranced, so you're okay with that.
Thank the Lord for that. Yes, absolutely. And so talk us through what goes into the skin, because a lot of people can't really get their head around the fact that the cream that you put on your skin doesn't just sit there and it has nothing to do with your body, that it actually does.
Yeah. So, there's this expression that most people know, don't put anything on your skin you can't eat. And the reason for that is that what you put on your skin goes within. And I used to find that a very hard concept to understand. It just didn't occur to me. I thought I could put whatever I wanted on as long as I cleansed at the end of the day. What difference does it make? But of course, I now realize, if you find this concept difficult, all you need to think about is nicotine patches and the way they work, or HRT cream. I'm told that it's a 10p size piece of HRT cream that changes the whole hormonal picture. Well, how could that possibly work if what you put on your skin doesn't go within? It clearly does. And there's a school of thought that says, actually, putting it on your skin is even worse than eating it, because at least if you're eating something, it's, you've got a chance for it to kind of go right through the digestive, process, and for the baddies to be filtered out. But, what you put on your skin, that hits straight in there, straight to the bloodstream. So yes, we absolutely have to be conscious of that. And, the really good news is nature's provided everything we need. And, you can do this really, really cheaply and simply by making your own stuff using foodie ingredients, or you can spend a medium amount of money, or you can spend a ton of money. And there is everything available for you now that is literally, 100% natural, sometimes 100% organic. and absolutely not going to do you any harm. And the picture's really changed. I mean, when I wrote that book all those years ago, there were quite a lot of skincare brands, but with makeup, for example, there were only 5 brands. I remember having to search, really do my research. I could only find 5 brands available. But now, of course, it's huge. The market is huge. So that's one really good thing. But yes, the bottom line is we do need to care about what we put on our skin. It makes a massive difference.
Yeah. Okay. So where would you advise that people start if they are very wedded to their nail varnish and their perfume and their posh skincare and designer lipstick, and they feel like, oh my gosh, this sounds really overwhelming and scary, and there's no way I'm going to turf out everything in my bathroom cabinet because that is going to cost a fortune. So I think for a lot of people, it's easy to just tune out rather than think, well, actually, let's start somewhere.
I think the best idea is to just make a change with 1 or 2 things and see how you get on. So start with something, that's really easy and you're probably not locked to, like a body moisturizer. So, you mentioned coconut oil, and if you get yourself a jar of a decent coconut oil, preferably a raw, cold pressed organic coconut oil, don't even think about coconut butter. That's something else entirely. You need raw extra virgin coconut oil, the kind that you would buy to eat. So, there are lots of really good brands, but you spend a little bit more, but get the proper raw, unprocessed stuff. Extra virgin, cold pressed are the expressions you're looking for, organic. It looks a bit like white lard, by the way, if you haven't used it before. So it solidifies when it's cold. And then as soon as the temperature's warm, it turns to oil. So it's a little bit weird to start with, but you very quickly get used to it. So just keep a tub in a jar of it in the bathroom and keep a long-handled spoon. And then, have a lovely bath or a shower, whatever you do. And then literally spoon out a decent-sized blob into your hands, rub your hands together, and it will turn to oil as you would use any other body oil. And that is a fantastic way to start because you'll find that it's a great body oil for all skin types. You can use it on your face. It might be a little bit heavy depending on how dry your skin is, but you can use a little bit. And as you found out, it has so many other uses as well. And then, of course, it's an amazing hair conditioner. It's the best hair conditioner you'll ever find. So again, you can sleep in it wrap a towel around your head, wash your hair, put the conditioner on, wrap a towel around your head, and as long as you're not having a night of passion, put some on your hands, put some gloves on. It's so amazing. And then the next day, obviously, wash your hair through a couple of times, and it's the best conditioner you'll find. And you'll do all of that, and it's very cheap. So, if you do that, you'll start to think, oh, that was interesting. I should feel silky and smooth and lovely. And I haven't put any toxins into my body at all. In fact, it's only beneficial. Not only that, you can take the jar downstairs and add a bit to your smoothie and cook with it if you like. So, the uses go on and on. So that kind of thing is a good place to start when you can see that you can buy something that's not too expensive and it has a few different uses. And, you don't need to carry on buying your plastic bottles of nonsense that stink.
Yeah, and it just is the gift that keeps on giving, because firstly, you can now buy it in like Tesco's, which a few years ago, I had to really hunt down coconut oil. But now, because it's such a kind of hip product, you can get a really good one in the supermarket.
Yeah.
And then I then keep the glass bottles because I go through loads of coconut oil. So now I will then store leftover food in my empty coconut jars in the fridge, thereby cutting down on, I hate to use cling film anyway, because again, leaches into the food and then you have, a whole load of other problems. So it's just a win-win to use more of these simple glass, traditional type products that they use day in, day out. If you go to India or Thailand, also, other places in the world, this is just a very common beauty product.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it is much more common now than it was, to say when I wrote my first book, but just don't be confused into thinking that you're buying coconut butter. I just want to really stress that, because if something says coconut butter and if it's in a tube and it's got, it'll probably have fragrance with it. And also don't be confused into thinking that because I'm saying coconut, that means you can buy like a coconut sun cream or something. And trust me, that will never have seen a coconut, and that will be an artificial fragrance. The interesting thing is actually that when you get a really good quality cold pressed coconut oil, it doesn't actually smell of anything. It's really a very faint coconut smell, but hardly anything. By the time you've put it on your body, there isn't really a fragrance. If you really want a fragrance, you could add a couple of drops of essential oil. I mean, things like a little drop of rose oil is beautiful, actually, with coconut oil.
Yeah. And I loved, you were the first person really who introduced me to the idea of non-toxic perfumes. Although I have to say that was the one part of the book where I actually didn't want to read it. It went in, but I wasn't ready to hear it. And it lodged itself. And the reason I wasn't ready to hear it was that I loved Jo Malone perfumes. And I continued to love Jo Malone perfumes for many years. And it took, I think, 10 years between me reading the book and me actually ditching my perfumes. So I think the other thing is you've got to go for the thing that you're most ready to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I say in that book. If any of it just starts to make you feel guilty, just forget about it. Just do something else. It's that imperfectly natural thing. None of us get it all right. Yeah. But talking about perfumes, have you read this book, which is my more current book, Look Great Naturally Without Ditching the Lipstick?
Janey, I have it here.
There you go. Now you see, that's got a much more in-depth section on perfume, as I'm sure you've seen, on creating your own auric fragrance. So I really went into depth there about how you can create perfumes by using different layers of essential oils. I had the most amazing time going on an organic perfume making course. It was fabulous.
Oh, what fun.
But yeah, it really was amazing. But even now, I just knock up really quick blends with different essential oils. It's super easy to do.
And then you put it in the base of...
In a base, there's a few different recipes in the book, but just actually would make up any aromatherapy kind of oil for yourself. You use a little base of a jojoba oil or grapeseed oil or whatever. But obviously the quantities are slightly different and the layering of the fragrance is slightly different if you're making an actual perfume.
Yeah.
You can just make one of those like little rollers that you put on your wrist.
Yeah, I love those. And the brilliant thing is they will also lift your mood as well.
Absolutely.
And like a toxic artificial fragrance.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny the effects of aromatherapy oils on mood. It's really quite amazing, definitely.
Yeah. I actually, as a moisturizer, I tend to use sesame oil just because I just find it kind of penetrates a bit better. But that is smelly. So I will add some essential oils like orange or geranium or something like that. And it's a real pleasure to go to the grocery store, take something that's organic, cold pressed, and then add your own combination of essential oils and just have that in your bathroom. It's such a pleasure to use.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for anyone who hasn't used facial oils before, that was one of the things that was one of the biggest revelations to me when I first started looking into all this stuff. I used to think that because I had greasy skin back then, that I couldn't use, oil in inverted commas. And it was an aromatherapist that taught me that that's not the case at all. And actually, when you use oils on your face, it rehydrates that kind of lipidic film of the skin. So it really, really gets in deep, and oils can be just so healing, and they're just beautiful. You need the tiniest amount, and I really find that people that, I don't know, you just get a sort of glow when you use oils. They're really lovely. So I mean, you can use cream as well, but if you want to mix it up a bit and use a facial oil, there are some lovely ones that you can buy, but they are very easy to make. And again, you can tailor it to how you're feeling. So if you feel you've got a cold coming on, or you're feeling a little bit under the weather, then you can actually add a couple of drops of eucalyptus or tea tree, have that sort of slightly mentholy kind of feel, just a tiny amount in with your carrier oil. And if you're feeling a bit hormonal, you could add a drop of rose, which, again, is just really good for balancing hormones. So you can tailor them to how you're feeling, which is perfect.
Yeah. And thinking about what you said about the greasy skin, I mean, any parent who's had teenagers will know that so many of them will get really bad acne and then very likely be given a very strong cream from their GP. I mean, we went through that with one of my kids. And for quite a long time, we just thought, it's the age. He's just got really bad skin, but it will pass. And then he suddenly took it upon himself to clean up his diet. I hadn't realized he'd been having 7 cans of 7-Up every day at school.
Ouch.
To have them in the house, but his friend was selling them. And he suddenly stopped. He actually stopped with all the sugar and everything quite suddenly. And within about a month, he had this beautiful skin. And that actually was his skin. He had beautiful skin. It was the crap that he was putting inside his body that was manifesting on the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, it's absolutely frightening. I mean, this obviously I always tell people to look at, what they're eating first. You have to look at that before you try and deal with skin conditions. You can't just kind of go, oh, I've got major skin conditions, I think I'll change my cream. It's only one part of the picture. I mean, usually when you've got skin conditions, it usually starts with the gut health, almost always. That's something that needs addressing there. So that's kind of number one. And then, as you say, there'll nearly always be stuff going on with sugar or artificial sweeteners. Now, I don't know what was in the 7-Up, but artificial sweeteners are pretty scary, as you know. I absolutely won't allow any of them in the house ever. So that, that's worth looking at. And definitely, for teenagers or for anyone suffering from skin problems, start from within first. Have a look, clean up your diet, make sure you're getting really good fats. Because again, everyone thinks that fats are the issue, but fats are not the issue. Sugar's the issue. Get really good fats. You need loads of avocado and olive oil and those kinds of foods, and nuts and seeds and all the stuff that teenagers tend to eat not much of. So, it's a really good idea to find a way of getting that sort of stuff into them. And then the dark green veg, again, they don't eat it, do they, most teenagers? I mean, a really super easy way is just to, get a juice down them. I'm really lucky that I've been doing it for so long now that my teenagers will actually ask for a green juice.
Oh, wow.
What joy. They'll even occasionally make it for me, very occasionally. But that's the easiest way, because then, of course, you can sneak everything in, including a bit of, a bit of avocado if you're turning it into a smoothie, or even some oil. You can actually get it all into one glass. And then you haven't got to stress about your, 5 to 10 portions of fruit and veg a day. You just bung it all in one smoothie. And that's going to make a massive difference to the skin, as well as drinking water, of course. It's the obvious stuff. And then, what you're putting on your skin, but also don't forget washing your hair. If you wash your hair every single day, clearly not an issue for me. I'm having such a bad hair day with lockdown. Oh God. But if you wash your hair every single day, right, and you use synthetic shampoo with synthetic chemicals and all the rest of it, that's all going to be dripping down your face. So in a sense, it doesn't matter what you're putting on your skin, on your face, if you're then using shower gels or shampoos that are also. So you've got to look at the holistic picture. It's really difficult to just pick out one thing and say that is what will make all the difference. Got to kind of do all the little layers.
Do you know, that's such a good point. I never really thought about shampoo that way, but of course it drips down your face.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just when you were talking about good fats there, Janey, I was thinking it's just so ironic that so many people, women especially, who've been through the whole dieting roller coaster, are still terrified of a spoon of avocado, and yet will happily be slapping all sorts of toxins, which really are scary, on their skin. But it can be a real battle to get them to have some fat.
Yeah. I hope things are changing on that front. There has been so much media attention in recent years on the bottom line for me is never, ever, ever have anything low fat or low sugar, or no sugar. We really do need good fat. We really do. It's super important. And the interesting thing is, when you eat really nutrient dense food with really good fat, you don't crave the sugar.
Yes.
You crave the sugar when you've had crappy processed food. That's when you actually crave sugar. But when you have a really nutritious meal that includes, nuts and seeds and avocado and greens and whatever, or if you eat fish, things like mackerel or whatever, you don't crave sugar after that.
Absolutely.
And you certainly, you don't snack as much.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just really, it's just really advantageous just to remember some of the basics, actually. So many people have just got so far away from the basics. And then they think that, I'm doing the right thing by fasting or by eating certain windows, and I'm missing breakfast. And then, I'm really, at lunchtime, I'm really good because I just grab a cereal bar. And just actually, no, you just got to eat properly. You just got to get back to real food. And I just interviewed Jason Vale for my podcast, and he's got this lovely phrase, he says, you just aim for foods that are low HI, and that means human intervention. So
what a lovely way of putting it,
isn't it? So whatever you're gonna eat, just ask yourself how much human intervention has been involved here. So if it's an apple, clearly none. Well, we hope not, as long as it's not been stored forever. But certainly, if it's an apple off the tree, none. Job done. Yeah. Okay, that's perfect, right? So then, well, what else? If you get in a packet of pot noodles or another, processed thing, quite a lot of human intervention, in fact, and possibly no food.
Yeah, it's such fake food, isn't it? And yet packaged so cleverly. And I know because I used to work in the food industry and PR, so I was a whole part of that, and it's very, very clever. But just going back to what you were saying about fats, Janey, I think the other thing which I always explain to women is that who want to stay looking young is that, to have a bouncy skin cell, you need to be eating the fat that surrounds each cell in your body. So, and sometimes we're so fixed on the next posh cream, that you see advertised in all the women's magazines with an airbrushed celebrity picture. And yet, if you're not eating the basic building blocks of what makes a bouncy skin cell, or any other cell for that matter, it's just a complete waste of money, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we know about essential fatty acids, and it's all there in the name. They're absolutely essential. And most of us are not getting enough, or we're not getting the right balance, of sort of omega-3s particularly. I think it's absolutely critical. And for women, but it's really, really important that we get good omega-3s. So as we get older, we've just absolutely got to eat that oily fish and, the flax seeds and the nuts and the avocados and the oily fish, all of that stuff. It's really, really critical. And if you're vegan and you don't have those kind of sources, then there are other ways of doing it. There's lots of ways of doing everything, actually. But when you start from the premise of eating, a really nutrient dense diet, low HI, that kind of covers it. That kind of covers everything, really.
It does. And moving on now to the rest of the kitchen, because that's where a lot of cleaning products come in. Everyone wants a clean kitchen, although I'm a bit sloppy in that area. But can you just talk us through, Janey, what you use to keep your kitchen clean?
Yeah, well, it's another one of those areas where I reckon I could save the average household probably 2/3 of what they're spending. If you're willing to go a bit old style, actually you're sort of 1950s kind of housewife probably had it right. Yes, they probably had a one bottle of something that wasn't particularly great, but most of the time they were on their hands and knees scrubbing stuff. And we don't really like doing that anymore. But actually, when you do, it's that, as I talk about in the book, it's that magic ingredient for the kitchen, and that's called elbow grease. And that's what none of us really want to use. But the reality is, really all we need is microfiber cloths. They are an amazing modern invention. Microfiber cloths, all those fabulous kind of natural loofah kind of cloths, they're brilliant. There's natural loofah sponges that you can get for doing the washing up. They're really cool. And bicarbonate soda is still an amazing wonder ingredient that is just amazing for cleaning just about anything. Certainly if you've got any plastics in the house, then it's great for cleaning plastics and cleaning coffee pots and things like that. If you want to use detergent type stuff, then there are a few really nice natural brands. BioD is really good. There's a brand called Green Sense. There's Ecova that most people have heard of for things like washing up liquid. And then, there are various types of ways of cleaning surfaces. And the easiest is literally bicarbonate soda. You can use white vinegar, which is amazing, costs nothing. And that's, the best thing for cleaning kind of ovens or, like oven trays. If you can make a little fizzing mix of bicarbonate of soda and vinegar. It makes a little...
It's very satisfying, isn't it? When it fizzles.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So that's really cool. This stuff is cheap, but it's a real change if you've been used to literally having something that you wash your dishes with and something that you do the surface with, and then something for the other surface, and then a different thing for the wooden surface, and then it goes on and on and on. And then I'll clean the windows with this, and I'll clean the surfaces with this, and the floor with this. Like, oh my God, the amount you're literally swimming in a toxic soup, and the cost is ridiculous. And you just simply do not need the half of it. You really, really don't. You don't need even a quarter of it. I mean, literally, you can get away with 2 or 3 products max.
Yeah, but that's what's on sale when you go to the supermarket. There's aisles and aisles of these different varieties, because obviously that's how you make profit, isn't it? By having 100 different types with flavors.
Of course.
And if you want to keep your house clean, that's important to you, then it's understandable that you're just going to put a whole lot in your shopping trolley. But since I got rid of all of that, having read Imperfectly Natural Woman, and literally I got rid of bin bags of stuff, bags, all the Flash and all the Mr. Sheen, hideous stuff. But I now go through loads of vinegar. And as you say, it's cheap as chips. It's 99p for a big bottle of white vinegar.
I've seen it even cheaper than that, actually. But the other thing I must mention is, of course, a bottle of tea tree oil is brilliant. And you can get the cheap stuff. And that's, if you like that kind of antibacterial thing, the Elucid or whatever, then a drop of tea tree oil will do that, obviously in the water. But yeah, I'm glad to hear it. And it makes a massive difference. I mean, I talk about this in Imperfectly Natural Woman, but years ago we had an au pair from Romania come and live with us. And she thought she'd come to the affluent West, and then kind of looks under my sink, and there's there's some tea tree oil and some white vinegar, bicarbonate of soda, and a cloth, and she's like, what the hell? And she just couldn't get her head around it. But what was really interesting was, when she arrived, she had acne, she had eczema. Yeah, she had eczema and quite bad acne on her face, a little bit of kind of psoriasis type stuff going on. She had some kind of not exactly asthma, but a little bit of breathing difficulties, insomnia, and everything just very low level. Just kind of, that's how she was, as it were. She didn't think it was anything unusual. And within, I think it was about 2 months of living with us, it all gone. Every single thing had gone.
Wow.
It looked completely different. It felt completely different. It's amazing. And that was literally just from obviously eating probably a bit healthier diet than she'd been on, and not using all that chemical crap that she'd been using.
That is so inspiring. And I think it's just such a beautiful example of how important our environment is, where we're spending all our time on our health, outer health, inner health. Yeah. These things that are just incidental that we don't really think about. I mean, with all of what you've just described, all of those conditions, you would have gone to a dermatologist, who knows else, and be put on who knows what. And yet what's really fascinating is that she healed herself just through a change of environment. Her body healed itself.
Absolutely. I've seen it happen so many times. I've met so many people who have literally everything's changed because they've just made these small changes around the house. And and it's not actually, the really interesting thing is, it's not until you stop that you realize how kind of low level, not very well you were. And I've met so many people like that who say, God, I didn't realize just how shattered I was and how poorly I slept until suddenly I was sleeping properly. And I didn't realize how many headaches I got all the time and how irritable I was until I stopped using all of this stuff.
Because of course you don't know what it feels like to be well until you are well.
Exactly. You just think it's your normal.
That's it. And most people, certainly who I encounter, have just got accustomed to not feeling well, and they consider that their normal. And yet I think what you and I are so passionate about is with these very small, achievable, inexpensive changes, you can feel radically different within weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The changes can come really quickly. I mean, I know it's something we haven't even spoken about at the moment, but natural deodorants are another area that it's a great place to start. And just while we're on this topic of fragrance and, how we smell, that's an area that it's a great place to start, actually, because putting artificial fragrance, into that very sensitive area is just such a bonkers idea. And people can change how they feel just by that one simple thing, by changing their deodorant, So this stuff makes a massive, it's that thing I'm always saying, it's the small change, but it's the big difference.
Absolutely. And as you say, what a sensitive area to be putting, heavy
absolutely.
Or
and it's not just the fragrance with things like deodorant, it's the phthalates, which are hormone disrupting, and the aluminium, of course. It's just a really bad idea. And don't anyone ever use antiperspirant, because that's a really flawed idea. So we don't want to stop ourselves from perspiring, right?
Yeah, it does feel like a lot of these things are almost fighting the body's natural response, but we're so used to perfuming it and stopping it being a body, and it's just got really messed up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have come a long way from, how things were kind of meant to be, really.
We really have.
I think you just, when you look to nature and look to what, your mum or your grandma used to do, depending on how old you are, you can sort of sort a lot of things out. And again, people say to me, well, that's not true, because, my mum or my grandma would definitely have had, cold cream, a tub of cold cream or red lipstick. And, and my answer will be, yeah, you're right. And that would have been it. There wouldn't have been 25 things in their makeup bag and another 30 in the bathroom cupboard and another 25 under the sink. And another 30 next to the laundry basket or whatever. They just would have a handful of things. And it's not the any one bottle of anything, actually, that's going to cause the problem. It's the cumulative effect, because when you add on all the, if you literally added it up, you would have literally thousands and thousands of different potentially toxic synthetic chemicals in your environment at any one time. And that's the issue, not the one, all.
Yeah. And with nobody knowing what that effect is or how it affects an individual person, because of course everyone reacts differently. And it's very difficult to trace that skin condition or that chronic condition down to the toxic stuff, because it can take years.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, you can't sort of say, well, I'll wait and see how I get on. And then, when you get sick, oh, right, that's because of that one bottle of washing up liquid in 2020. It doesn't work that way. But my attitude would be, well, if you can use a natural version of something you want to use anyway, if there is a natural version and it's just as good and it's cheaper or the same price, and you're ticking the eco box by using it, and it's probably acting as your health insurance, what's not to like? You've got nothing to lose.
For sure. And if you think about something as simple as, say, a lip balm, I used to use Vaseline because what everyone uses, but now I think petroleum jelly. Do I really want to be eating that? Because of course, everything that we put on our lips, we end up eating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, lip balms are super easy just to make your own or to buy a natural one, and no one needs to be consuming any more petroleum. It's just all an illusion that it's good for you, that stuff. And actually, the reality is, I always think it's funny when people buy lip salve and products like that, because they're constantly saying, oh, my lips are really, really sore. I need to buy some more lip salve. And the question will be, well, why, if it works, why are you buying some more? The truth of it is, over time, those petroleum-based salves and balms just thin the skin. That's what they do. So it makes you even more open to sensitivity. It's not, they're not actually, it initially feels lovely and soothing. But then, if you went and got your car fixed and the mechanic hands you a pot of engine grease and says, here you go, I've got some of this left over if you want to rub it on your skin. And you'd be horrified. But it would probably feel quite smooth, but you'd be horrified. But that's really what it is. But it's all been dressed up, of course, with foaming agents and nice fragrance and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. So like
mouthwash. Mouthwash, there's another one.
Don't get me started. Yeah. Yeah. That's hideous, absolutely hideous. I mean, I'm convinced that some mouthwashes contain effectively traces of antifreeze. It's that kind of product, isn't it? It's not what you want to be using. It's 100% unnecessary. Why would you need mouthwash if you've got any, chew some parsley? What's the issue? Eat something different, or chew some parsley, or have a tiny bit of essential oil of spearmint or peppermint or something.
Yeah, and just to finish off, I'd like to ask you, this is a very big question to finish off with, Janey, but I know there's something else that you're really passionate about. And that is an area of toxins which we don't always put in the same bracket as our washing powder and perfumes, and that's alcohol, which again can be a very big blind spot for people and has been a huge problem for people this year who found themselves in lockdown and have kind of found themselves drinking a little bit more than they were used to. So how do you feel about that whole, alcohol as a toxin?
Yeah, well, I mean, this for me has been an absolute revelation for me. And this is why I'm very glad that my website, my book was called Imperfectly Natural, because otherwise, I certainly wouldn't have gotten away with any of it, really, because, for years I skirted around this massive elephant in the room, and I absolutely didn't see alcohol as being coming into the same category, because everyone drinks, or, pretty much everyone drinks. It's the norm. It's what everyone does. So I just didn't see it as, I don't know. I bought into all the crap, really. I bought into all this whole illusion that alcohol is fine. And I used to read all these articles. I used to love reading them, actually, whenever one came up in the press that, a glass of red wine is good for your heart, and all this absolute, what I now know is total bullshit. But I used to savor those articles about how alcohol is good for you. I always managed to avoid the small print that usually said in moderation. I managed to avoid that. And of course, the reality is it's the social glue that sticks everything together. It's particularly for women, it's become such a thing because it glues you together for play dates. And, it doesn't matter what it is. It's celebrations and commiserations, really. Alcohol's there. And somehow we manage to think that we're healthy and well and spiritual while we're caning loads of booze, unless that's just me. But I don't think it is. And it took me, forever, really. I mean, when I look back, it's the only thing I regret. I know people say don't have regrets. Well, I do. I regret I didn't do that sooner. That's the truth. So for me, it took, I don't know, it's a trap, you see. Alcohol is a trap. And when you're in that trap, it can feel very, very difficult to get out. And I'm not talking about rock bottom, by the way. I never had a rock bottom moment. No one would have ever known I had any kind of an issue. I never missed a day of work. I didn't drive when I was drinking. It was never an issue. I was just someone who, started off with a couple of glasses a night and then probably ended up with not far off a bottle some nights. Because it just builds up. Your tolerance builds up. It becomes the thing that you do. And before long, it's kind of, you're in a trap. It gets you in a trap. And then for me, what happened was I kind of hit a point where I was thinking about it a lot. I knew something had to change, but I didn't know what to do. So obviously I did what everyone does to start with. I thought, I know all about health and well-being and all this. Of course I can stop drinking. What the hell? I'm not addicted. I don't have a problem. Of course I can stop drinking. And so I would, wake up and decide, right, that's it. I'm not drinking. And then by 6 o'clock, the wine witch would be in my head saying, God, you've had a hell of a day. You deserve to get away from the kids and have a bit of grown-up time. You do. So go and have your lovely chilled Sauvignon Blanc. You deserve it. Just have one. And so this voice was in my head, and I'd be back where I started, and then I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and I remember so clearly, it would always be 3 a.m. I used to look at the clock, which of course my liver tried to say, please God, and then I would the voice would then be a very different voice that was then saying, what are you doing? Just seriously, what are you doing? You're actually going to cause yourself so many problems. This is not even who you are. This is so not authentic with who you even are. And that went on for months and months, possibly years, actually, before I really tried, started to look for a way to deal with it. And then when I did start to look for a way to deal with it, there was nothing available, or it felt as though there was nothing available. Clearly, I didn't fit the picture of needing GP services or rehab or any of that stuff. I did ask the doctor when I went, I don't know, for something else. I think actually I went for a vitamin D test. So here's me, super healthy, having my vitamin D test. And because I liked the doctor and I trusted her, I thought, you know what, I'm going to raise this. So it took a lot of my confidence to sort of share with her, something, I'm a bit worried that I might be drinking a bit too much. And that took a lot for me to say. And her response was, well, how much are you drinking? And obviously I lied. Everyone lied. But then they know that. So I said, well, 2-3 glasses a night kind of thing, sometimes a bit more. And her response was, well, sounds pretty normal to me. You look okay. Try and have an alcohol-free day, yeah? Oh. If I hear that phrase again, I swear I'll have to kill someone. So basically that gave me the license to just carry on, And then I saw therapists and practitioners. And again, if I felt comfortable and confident, I would, at the end of the session, I would say to them, actually, there is something else. I know I've come for energy healing or reflexology or whatever I've come for, Actually, I think I might be drinking too much. And it was just always the same answer. Oh, have a glass of water in between. Or, in other words, it's not their fault. They didn't know that there is this thing. And it's called grey area drinking. And it's what
grey area
drinking. It's what the majority of women are caught up in. If they're drinking, they're not at rock bottom, but they're not completely okay either. And if you're somewhere on that spectrum, you are a grey area drinker. And that means that, all is not lost, but why not sort it out while it's in the grey, rather than, as I call it, the booze elevator, because once you get closer to the bottom, it's really, really hard to step off. So, I feel incredibly blessed that I was able to, I don't even know what changed really. I think it all really changed when I read a book. Again, you were talking about my book, kind of changing everything for you. I read a book called The Sober Diaries by Claire Pooley. Because we were going to be interviewing her. And the minute I saw the book, I thought, oh my God, this has been given to me for a reason. And when I read that book, it was about, she was exactly like me. She was a mum, drinking too much, hating herself, knowing it had to change. And the book talks you through her, stopping drinking and just how tricky that was to start with. But then on to how she started to feel better, effectively. And I think that was the first time I'd ever considered that, hold on a minute, life is better without booze. I could never have contemplated that. My thoughts were just, oh God, how will I know I've got to do this, but I don't want to, because how will I survive if I can't be happy and social anymore? And if I can't, for God's sake, I deserve it. It was wrapped up in all those stories. And that was the very first time that I kind of just caught sight of something else. So I just decided to do Dry January to start with, and then never looked back. And, I now know that I did it all wrong. Of course, I should have, it would have been really helpful if I'd actually supported those early weeks with really good nutrition and by getting connected with other people and changing my mindset and all the stuff that I now know. I didn't do any of it, but nevertheless, I somehow got through. But that's why I now run the Sober Club, because now I help people actually do that from the off. So you can make those early weeks so much easier than I had to have them. So I hope you're going to get my new book when it comes out, Healthy, Happy, Sober.
Oh, I love that. And how comforting for listeners to hear that from you and to hear that you came through that. And I'm sure so many people will just resonate with that.
Yeah, I think it's a massive, massive area. And more and more doctors are starting to understand, but many, many don't. I did a thing with I did a bit of promo with the Federation of Holistic Therapists, which I was thrilled to be able to do. I just wrote a piece for them. And they did a survey of their members, and many of the therapists and practitioners, of course, their heart is completely in the right place, as it is with the doctors in many cases. They don't mean any harm. They just don't know about grey area drinking. They only know what to do with you if you are at rock bottom, and then they can get you into rehab or alcohol. But that's not where we're at. I don't resonate with that at all. So the question that we should be asking ourselves isn't, oh my God, am I an alcoholic? Is my drinking so dangerous that I'm going to be in rehab, or you're going to find me in a skip? No, of course not. Of course not. The question is, could my life be better physically and emotionally without the booze? And if a little glimmer, in your unconscious mind says, wow, I wonder, then give it a shot. Because particularly as we get older, I mean, I don't know how you want to end this interview, but here's one of the best ways. Do you want to know the best anti-aging secret ever?
Go on, let's hear it, Janey.
Well, that's it. Ditch the booze. You will not find anything that is better for your health and well-being, mindset, the way you look. I swear to God, it makes you younger. That's my story anyway.
Wow. And isn't that a message that we need to share? Because it is so much aligned with sophistication and fun. And
it's absolute bollocks. The emperor's not wearing any clothes, really. It's toxic liquid. That's just how it is. And I used to buy into all that, I mean, it doesn't matter what I say. Everything I say, I point a finger back at myself, and I am 100% non-judgmental about any of this. I've been there, done it. I've absolutely got the t-shirt, and I absolutely, can say for certain that, nothing scares me or shocks me. And I've heard everything a million times, but I simply don't buy it. I've done a ton of research. Alcohol is not good for you. There are no safe limits of alcohol. Sorry to have to tell everybody out there. I hated it when people said that. I remember reading, I think it was Dame Sally Davis. Was it her? Years and years ago, did this whole thing about even 2 glasses of wine can exacerbate your risk of breast cancer. Oh, God, I remember being incensed.
I remember that.
Furious. I was absolutely furious. So then I went out of my way to try and find other articles that could diss that. I worked so hard to try and, argue with my unconscious mind that even back then was probably saying, sweetie, this would be a really good idea for you to listen to this. Having said that, though, what I try and do with the Sober Club and with the book that I've written is I try and encourage people to get that knowledge, get that logic. So actually do put a little bit of time into understanding that alcohol is bad for you. And there are lots of books out there that do that brilliantly. So do grasp that knowledge, because you may as well have that for certain. You may as well know that. But more importantly, get the inspiration that life is better. That's why I do my podcast, Alcohol Free Life. And I have the most amazing guests on that podcast. So inspirational. And when you start listening to those guests and you start reading all this inspiration, there's a little bit of you that says, well, hold on a minute. All these people can't be wrong. Just listen to this stuff, right? So yes, you need the logic, but there's that phrase, isn't there? Emotions, not logic, inspire action. Because you can go on for as long as you like saying, I must give up. I've got to give up. I'm ruining my health. I must give up. But always, just as it did with me, eventually, even if you do give up for a week or a couple of weeks and you white knuckle it, or if you go through dry January or sober October and you white knuckle it till the end of the month, the little voice will say, oh, you deserve it now. You can have one now. And what we really need to get to is the point where the logic is telling you this is toxic liquid. There are no safe levels. But on the other side, how much more exciting is it if you've got the motivation of everything in your life will improve. Everything.
Yeah, it's so true. What's hard for some people is, even if they have the motivation, if they're living with people or if their friends are people who don't want to see them ditch the alcohol, it can be so difficult. And I remember Janey coaching a guy who was in his 50s, and what he drank in a day, and he would not consider, he was not an alcoholic. Oh, he said he wouldn't have seen himself as that, but what he drank in a day was unbelievable. And his starting point was just a couple of bottles of wine. It was just, from where he started from. And then every morning he would take a Nurofen to get out of bed. That was just what he did. And actually, I helped get him off the booze fairly quickly, much quicker than the sugar. The sugar was a real problem. And he said, you know what? I've been getting up this week. I didn't need a Nurofen to get out of bed. But then what happened was he used to eat out a lot at a very, very posh restaurant in Manchester. And he was known for being this bon vivant who'd always get the best wines. And he came to me one week and he said he went to his local restaurant, and the maitre d' came up to him and said, you know, what are you having, you know, to drink? And he said, no, I'm doing dry January or whatever it was. And the maitre d' said, I will pay the charity. I will give a donation, because he wanted him to drink. Like, he didn't want this person to change. So it can be really hard to go against other people's expectations.
Yeah, it can. And I mean, this is a lot of the work that we do in the Sober Club. This is the thing that a lot of people puts off a lot of people from even giving up. Exactly that. They're worried about sober shamers and other people's opinions. I mean, there's a few things that I'd say, you know, obviously it's quite in depth, but, you know, what I'd say is, number one, you're doing this for you. You're not doing it for anyone else. And it's for your health and well-being. And when you make your decision, even if you're doing a challenge or whatever, maybe you set yourself 30 days or 100 days, whatever you decide to do, you make that decision and you make it non-negotiable. So I always call it, you know, there was this fabulous blog written, and I didn't write it, sadly. I wish I had, but it was called The Pregnancy Principle. And I really loved that because it's the same. Like, when you're pregnant, it's non-negotiable that you will take care of your body for your own health and the sake of your baby. So if somebody, whether they're a good friend or your boss or whoever it is, just, you know, thinks it's a great idea for you to go bungee jumping and drink a load of alcohol and take some drugs at 8 months pregnant, it's non-negotiable. I mean, end of. Just don't need to discuss it, right? And this is the same. It's non-negotiable. So number one, you're doing this for you. Number two, you can't head off out without preparation, right? So you need to put your preparation in place. One of the things I now know, I did wrong back at the beginning, but what I now know is you need to set yourself up for success. And that means having your sober toolkit ready. And it means prepping ahead, even in terms of what you will say. So you can choose what you say to other people. If you want to fib, you can fib. Who cares? It's none of their business. You can say you're on medication. You can say whatever the hell you like, or you can tell the truth and say, you know what? I'm having some time off without alcohol because I've heard it makes you feel fantastic, you know, or I'm seeing if I feel better, or it doesn't matter what you say. Say whatever you like, but prep ahead what you're going to say. And then, so if you're going out with friends or whatever it is, you give them a heads up, you drop them a text, or you send them an email and you say, just a heads up, I'm not drinking alcohol, more for you, or whatever you want to say. If you're going to a cafe or a restaurant, okay, number one, don't go there if you know that it's going to be awkward for that period of time. But number two, if you do choose to go out, and I'm not trying to say anyone should not go. I mean, I did everything the same. I didn't restrict myself at all. But in the case of that guy, what he should have done is phoned ahead to the restaurant and find out whether they have any great alcohol-free drinks. Okay. And more restaurants are stocking them now. So that's good. But if they don't, then you ring and you say, well, I want to make a booking, but I want to bring with me some fabulous alcohol-free sparkling wine. Can I do that? And you charge me corkage for a soft drink. Note that, by the way, corkage for a soft drink, which is what you would have ordered. And then you buy yourself some Naughty, Noughty, which is the most awesome alcohol-free, vegan, organic sparkling wine. And while everyone has their stuff, you have yours. And it's non-negotiable. End of. I mean, if you had become vegan, and, you know, or if you had some dietary issue where a doctor had said to you, do not eat X food, because if you do, it will make you seriously ill. If somebody in a restaurant said, well, you know what, I'll pay a charity if you eat that food that's going to make you seriously ill, you just go, I don't think so. It's non-negotiable. You know? So ultimately, it just comes down to prep. He hadn't prepped. It's as simple as that. Yeah. The minute you stand authentically in what you're doing, you just say, well, I appreciate it. That's great. Pay the charity anyway. I'm having my alcohol-free drink. Yeah. And it doesn't change who you are as a person. It's absolute nonsense that alcohol makes you fun and happy. Actually, the reality is, after the first drink, most people become really bloody boring when they've had a drink. Your threshold may become less. You may not want to rock and roll till 2 a.m. So a really good idea is to prep early, to leave early. So, let people know that you've got an early start the next day, or you've got a babysitter to get back to, or whatever excuse you want to use, because you'll get bored. Once they start repeating themselves, which they do. It's very interesting when you stop drinking, you suddenly notice just how boring everyone else is when they've had a few drinks. It actually gets a bit sad when your friends start telling you the same stuff they told you 5 minutes ago. Okay, it's time to go.
And yet I think of all the memes that I've seen over lockdown, keep calm and carry on drinking, and all the pictures of influencers with a big glass of wine. Each time I was thinking, oh, this is really not helpful to people. This is going to lead to all sorts of problems, which it has, of course. But it's that image of the glamour and the sophistication of a nice big glass with a posh.
It is, but I do think it's changing. I think it's starting to change now. We have got the rise of the sober curious, the mindful drinkers. There are loads of sober influencers now. And actually, people just need to open their eyes. And when it's the right time, it has to be the right time for you. If it's not the right time, it's not the right time. It doesn't matter. I would never try and argue anyone into ditching the booze. If you're really happy with your drinking, then knock yourself out. I'm not suggesting prohibition by any means. I run the Sober Club for people who have identified that they know that their life would be better without this. Even if they haven't cracked it yet. And in the Sober Club, we've got people who've been sober 6 years because we focus on health and well-being and personal development and mindset and self-care and all of that.
Yeah, because they keep coming. It's wonderful.
Because it underpins everything. At the moment we're doing a juicing challenge, and we've got, we just have a ton of stuff because all around health and well-being. But you see, I could have just created, an imperfectly natural club, as it were, self-care club, because that's all the stuff I'm doing. But actually, that wouldn't have made sense because it's only now I've brought in the sobriety piece that the jigsaw is complete. I now know that all those years that I was doing my holistic living work, which of course I'm still doing, there was a missing piece in that jigsaw. Yeah. And that was it. And that's why I couldn't, I never felt quite right. I was always anxious. I couldn't meditate, funny things that would I just used to say, oh, that's just who I am. I know I do interviews for Hay House Radio and all that stuff, but do I love myself? Can I meditate? Don't be ridiculous. That's not me. Don't be so daft, And of course it wasn't, because I couldn't be authentic because I was bloody drinking all the time and, pouring toxic liquid down my neck every day.
Yeah. Oh, I love your authenticity and the fact that you are so honest. And I'm just so grateful that you have shared everything that you've just shared. So I want to ask you, Janey, where can people find you if they want to start reading up and hearing more of your very practical, accessible tips? How can they find you?
Well, obviously, if you're interested in any of the booze stuff, anything linked to that, go to thesoberclub.com. And the book, Happy, Healthy, Sober, you can pre-order it now. It comes out February the 11th. There's a TEDx talk, which you might quite like as well, called Sobriety Rocks, Who Knew? And then, of course, there's the imperfectlynatural.com website, again, which is all my holistic living stuff. And, various books and things. And then you can just follow me on social media at Janey Lee Grace.
Okay, fantastic. I want to thank you so much, Janey, for your time, and not just your time today, but all the inspiration that you've personally given to me, even though I never met you. But it really has changed not only my life, but it's rippled out to the rest of my family. And I hope they will pass it on to their children, when they have kids as well. So I feel a huge debt of gratitude to you, and I just wish you all the luck in the world with continuing to spread your message.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Janey.